Hey, fellow babies, welcome back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. Hope you're watching on SIFTD. Shane needs the support, and if you can join SIFTD, it's as little as a couple of bucks a month, so it's really not a big imposition. You don't have to use everything in the system, although there's plenty of stuff. SIFTD's going to be broadcasting from E3, so keep that in mind. It's probably a good time to join in front of E3. You actually get a lot of up close and personal interesting stuff. Okay, our first question this week, this month, this year. From YouTube, from Carl595, has Sony underestimated the commercial exposure that E3 brings to the industry each year? Is it leaving the door open for Microsoft and Nintendo to own the narrative for the rest of 2019? What's the biggest consequence of skipping the show? Why would Sony announce the specs for PS5 and then not attend? Look, Sony people are nice. They've been nice to me. I love the people that work there. They had a head of PlayStation named John Cadera. I don't understand why he moved aside. He's doing something else. They promoted Jim Ryan, who I think is great, but they promoted Jim Ryan, who's a real game guy, stud, after they announced they were skipping the show. So I don't know if it was Jim's decision. If it is, I don't get it. I actually think it came from on high. My bias is Sony looks at the cost benefit, and the people who recognize the benefit aren't the ones who bear the cost. I think the corporation decided, it's going to cost us $5 million. I have no idea what they spent on E3, but $5 million bucks, and the benefit's only $4 million, so we're not going to do it. Where the PlayStation guys are like, no, the benefit is $20 million because we get lasting brand recognition. Gosh, I think their showcase last year, I think they told me had 2 million concurrent views during their E3 show. What's that worth? Guess what? More than they spent on the frickin' show. So, and I will tell you, the people that you recognize, like Sean Layden, totally gets this. So this is not Sean Layden saying, let's not go to E3. No way. Not Jim Ryan either, I don't think. Not Phil Rosenberg either. Those guys are smart. They get it. But unfortunately, if corporate in Tokyo says, we're not spending the money, what are these guys going to say? They're going to say, yes, sir. Thanks for your consideration. So the biggest consequence of skipping the show is you miss an opportunity to shine when the whole world is watching. And in fairness to Sony, again, they don't have any big games launching for the balance of the year. Days Gone is already out. I'm pretty confident Death Stranding isn't coming this Christmas. God of War was obviously last year. So, Spider-Man was last year. So I don't think, Sekiro's already out. I mean, I don't think there's anything big coming out that's a PlayStation exclusive. If The Last of Us Part 2 is coming in September, they would be showing it. They'd be talking to press, you'd think. Arnie Meyer RSVP'd to my E3 party and said, since there's nothing going on at the show, I can actually commit that I'll be there.
Well, it's because Sony's not going to be there.
So I don't believe it. Who knows? Look, one of you dweebs out there, and you're not allowed to do this if you don't follow me on Twitter, but if you follow me on Twitter, call me out on this when Last of Us Part 2 comes out in September. That would be cool. And, those guys are really good. But Arnie's coming, and he's like the community manager, and he's coming because he said he had nothing better to do, and he's in LA. So I don't think so. Why would Sony announce the specs for PS5 and then not attend? I think that's their way of making up for not being here. I mean, I think they're trying to keep gamers interested. So, like I said, I completely agree with you. It's dumb to skip it, especially because there's going to be fewer of them at my party. But a couple of guys are coming in. There's a couple of guys coming in for PlayStation, but they're just coming in because they have an opportunity to meet with people. They should have a booth. I completely agree with you. So why do anything that makes no sense? Obviously, if it doesn't make sense to you and me, then I'm not going to be able to explain why it makes sense to them. That's the truth. I don't know the answer, but great question. Our next question from SIFTD and I remember this guy, from Zet Saber. Will Microsoft make adjustments to its next Xbox now that Sony has revealed the initial specs for PS5, or is it too late? Another great question. I have no idea, but I'll do the best I can to guess. First of all, I don't know how far along the Xbox Next is in terms of final specs. The stuff that probably can't change is CPU, GPU, and it's highly unlikely that it would have deviated materially in specs from what the PlayStation 5 is going to be. What probably doesn't have to be etched in stone yet is like the amount of DDR RAM, so they can probably tweak specs like that. And then internal specs in the box that are commodities, like how much flash memory do you put in, piece of cake. Like that they can change up and down. Really stupid little things like power supply and color and all that, they can fix the last week. So think what a developer needs to make a game. He's got to know the clock speed, and he's got to know what the graphics processor can do, and he's got to know how he can allocate his RAM. I mean, that's essentially it. So he's got to figure out how many parallel processors are working at once and how much memory he's got for each of those. If he's got that, he can work on a game, and more often than not, these games are kind of a very simple language. So, even though they have proprietary, code, it's really kind of standard now. I think it's C++ or whatever, but I haven't written code since the 70s. But it's kind of standard. This stuff
was
doesn't
there
exist.
code in the 70s?
Yeah, no, it was like punch cards. 80s.
Basic.
It was like basic. Yeah, it was like COBOL and basic shit that like I don't even know how to do it anymore. I mean, anyway, they're using some basic languages, and so I think that the biggest swing is the DDRs, is the RAM, and I don't know. I didn't look at the PlayStation specs with any understanding, so I'm the wrong guy to ask. But yes, I think they'll make adjustments. Yes, it might be too late if it's CPU, GPU. And so, developers know what they're working on because they're working on it. And the truth is, the developers are saying to Microsoft, hey, Sony's using this clock speed. Is yours going to be the same? Because we don't want to build it twice. NDA or not, because they won't build it twice. So Microsoft, honestly, the first mover dictates the clock speed, and the second mover is going to copy it. And so AMD makes both chipset, CPU, GPU, in the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One now. My guess is AMD is going to make both of them. My guess is AMD's been sharing it. So I honestly don't think it's that big a secret. Now Sony's out, so we know. The chip fabricator has to set up a factory to make the chips. So the chips aren't in production. The facility that's going to manufacture the chips takes a while to build. And I don't mean it's a ground up. It could be a line within an AMD facility now, but they have to machine it up. They've got to they have to know the specs. I'd say at least 15 months before launch, and so we're getting there. I mean, so those specs have to be finalized probably now, maybe 18 months. Otherwise, they can't change it on the fly. They just can't do it. So I hope that, that, by the way, that's why the microprocessor in PlayStation and Xbox hasn't changed. And you can say the Xbox One X has a different microprocessor. It has a different GPU, like for sure, because it does 4K graphics, but it's hard. Our next question from SIFTD from Skimpy. Days Gone has below average reviews for a PlayStation exclusive, but appears to have sold okay based on UK sales data. When a publisher decides whether to make a sequel, do sales or critical reception matter more? Good question. Do you think there'll be a sequel to Days Gone? Sales matter more. Critical reception will matter if the game gets above a 90 and doesn't sell well because they just blew it and put it in the wrong launch window. Days Gone certainly is not the wrong launch window, so they can't use that as an excuse. Had it gotten a 90, I think, and like my favorite example for this is Psychonauts. Got a 92, sold like 1 million units. And I think there's a Psychonauts 2 finally, but it's like how many years later, and 15. You just can't greenlight something that nobody bothered to play. And that's, but it's really easy to kill a franchise that's just really bad. It's hard to justify a sequel if the game didn't sell well. And it's easier if the game didn't sell well and it's a gem and you feel like it's a hidden gem and we just launched it in the wrong window. So, that would have been, like Titanfall 2, really well received. It just launched right in front of Battlefield and didn't get any promotion and the game suffered, but there will be another one. They may not call the next one Titanfall 3, but there's going to be more Titanfall games. So the answer is I don't think Days Gone will have a sequel. The only way I think that it does is if the studio says, here's what we blew and we have such a great twist and a great idea. And, there's a lot of games. You know what? I'm calling out Insomniac because they're a great studio that makes great games. Even the best guys, just every once in a while they screw it up. And to be honest, I think game reviewers have now set a bar that is like the Red Dead Redemption bar, like gets judged in that light, and man, it's hard to compare to Red Dead Redemption. And so the balance is really hard, and in Mortal Kombat, I'm sure they got something wrong in the balance, and the microtransactions were onerous. It's not a reason to ding the game. It's a reason to say this needs to be fixed, and I can't recommend the game if it's not fixed. But I honestly think that might be one of the most beautiful games I've seen. I hate fighting games. I suck at them. I have to blame Seth Killian for that. Remember Seth Killian?
Yeah, of course.
Seth Killian at a Street Fighter event back in like 05 or 07 or something. I remember saying, "So you really were like the best Street Fighter player in the world?" And he goes, "Yes." And I go, "How good are you?" And he goes, "I'm right-handed. I'll play you with my right hand tucked into my, behind my belt, and left-handed only, and I'll let you get me down to, like 10% red zone of health, and then I will kick your ass." And he did, with one hand. With one hand. I was like watching this. I actually stopped even playing, and I was watching his hand because he was so amazing. So I hate fighting games because I consider them button mashers, and I know that they're not, but I don't know what to do. And so I used to play Mortal Kombat in the arcade, the 25-cent arcade. And I remember like accidentally doing a death move, not a death move, a fatality move. Occasionally I would accidentally button mash the right order, and I couldn't figure out what I did, and all these other guys were explaining to me, it's like left, up, back, hit, left. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I love that game. Our last question this week from YouTube, from Ready, Set, No. Now that we know the base specs for PlayStation 5, how much do you think it will cost? $300.
Really?
Yeah.
So they're gonna lose their ass.
Who knows?
They would lose their ass at 300.
I don't think they can afford to be going out at 4 again. I think that in the face of Google Stadia and by PlayStation 5 launch, Amazon Echo, Apple HomePod, all these things are going to have built-in game capability. I don't think you can charge $400. If a console is $400 and an Amazon Echo is $200, and the Amazon Echo will play the same games at the same speed and do everything. And by the way, Amazon will lose its ass to win this market share. So if an Echo is $200 and a PlayStation is $400, PlayStation's fucked. You can tell me all about the specs. I haven't seen a cost breakdown yet. Has anybody done it and say what these components cost? I don't know. I don't think they're going to sell very many at $500. So I think that's a problem. There was this thing called the PlayStation 3 that came out at $600, and for about 4 or 5 years, it got its ass kicked by the Xbox 360, and I don't think Sony can make that mistake again. So if they price this thing at $500 or $600, the Xbox isn't going to be that expensive. It's just not going to be. And the Amazon, whatever they call it, and the Google, whatever they call it, and the Apple, whatever they call it, are going to be much cheaper. So I think Sony has to acknowledge that you've got big players with a ton of money. Amazon does over $250 billion in sales, and Amazon makes over 40% gross margin. I'm going to help you with that math. They have over $100 billion every year in gross profit. So to whittle down from gross profit down to net income, you take away their expenses. So they have $100 billion a year on discretionary spending. Now some of it, obviously, warehouses and shipping, obviously they have to spend that. The rest of it, if they say, let's just spend $5 billion a year on building out our game console business, and we're gonna lose $5 billion a year, 5% of their profit, big fucking deal, gonna happen. Apple has, I think, $140 billion in cash. Google has not that much less. I don't know, I think Google's less than that, but tens of billions in cash, tens of billions. Sony doesn't. So these guys, if they want this business, they can outspend Sony. And so Sony should not be bleeding itself dry and saying, no, we're gonna make a console that costs $500 to make, and we're gonna sell it for $6. That would be dumb. NVIDIA stuff isn't expensive to make. NVIDIA just makes a big profit on it. So in fairness to NVIDIA, Theirs is all technology. It's not the actual cost of the stuff. It's their investment in the R&D to make the graphics processor that powerful. If NVIDIA says we want to be the standard that everybody aspires to, we're going to sell it to Sony for $20, they can't. So I don't know the answer. Okay, so I'm going to stick with 300, and I know I'm wrong, and I don't really care. And I hope you guys all tell me I'm wrong. That's cool. That's what makes it fun. It's just a guess. When it gets announced, I'll be revisionist and remember that I said $600. I don't care. I think Sony would be making a mistake pricing that much above what a Google. And Google Stadia, my guess is there will be no device required. I mean, you can play a game on your phone or your TV, but Amazon and Apple for sure are going to do devices because that's what they do, and Google will do a device. And so those devices are just not going to be $300. They're going to be $200 or less. And they're just Amazon's going to make Echo Show Video Game Edition, and it's going to have a little screen, and you can play it on that, or it's going to Bluetooth to your TV, and you can play it on your TV, and it'll have good graphics. It may not be comparable to PlayStation, but it's going to have the same games because Amazon's going to pay up and make sure they have the same games. So I would not take a chance in the face of better capitalized competition who wants your market share. So Sony should be thinking really hard before they come out with a $600 box. They've done it before and it didn't work. So we'll see. Maybe Sony's going to say, you know what, we're the Porsche, we're the Maserati of game consoles, and Amazon's the Volkswagen. Well, that's cool. Guess who sells more cars? Volkswagen. Please remember to sign up as a SIFTD patron on Patreon. If you can't do that, please remember to link your Prime account to your Twitch account, and we'll get paid a little bit, and that would be cool. And if you haven't done it yet, reconnect this month, re-up the subscription. It's one click. And all of you, I don't care if you pay or not, follow me on Twitter, @MichaelPachter. Please send me a tweet, not a DM, and say, you guilted me into this. I'll retweet it. You'll get 40,000 people who go, good for you. Or they'll say, what kind of a moron are you? Pachter's an idiot. Whatever. And follow Shane @DinFire. Follow SIFTD @SIFTD Games. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.